The mop made wet streaks across the marble floor, back and forth in steady rhythm. Danny Walsh had cleaned this hallway so many times he could do it with his eyes closed. 2 in the morning meant the Galactic Embassy was finally quiet. No diplomats rushing past, no alien delegates arguing in languages that hurt human ears, no security guards telling him to hurry up and finish. Just Danny, his cleaning cart, and miles of empty corridors. He liked it that way. 3 years of night shift janitorial work had taught him that being invisible had its advantages. People talked freely around janitors, never noticing they were there. He had learned which species shed scales that clogged the drains, which ones left acidic residue that ate through regular cleaning supplies, and which ones are actually polite enough to say thank you. The Dracith were not in that last category. Dragons, humans called them, though the proper term was Dracith. They had taken over the entire East Wing for the Coalition Trade Summit, and their attitude made it clear they considered themselves superior to every other species present. Danny had seen their delegation exactly 3 times, always from a distance. Massive reptilian creatures with scales like armor plating and wings that scraped the reinforced ceilings. They never looked at him. Nobody did. Tonight felt different, though. Danny paused, mop dripping onto the floor he had just cleaned. There was a sound coming from the restricted Dracith wing, not the usual silence that hung over that section like a weight. This was something else, a low, whimpering noise, followed by a frustrated growl that rattled the ventilation ducts that he should keep walking. The Dracith wing was off limits to cleaning staff. They had their own people handling their spaces, which was fine by Danny. Less work for him, but the sound came again, sadder this time, almost like crying. Danny looked both ways down the empty corridor. His shift supervisor was 3 floors up, probably asleep in the break room like usual. The security cameras in this section had been acting up all week. If he was quick, nobody would even know he had been there. He left his cart and followed the sound. The Dracith wing smelled different. Mineral and smoke, like standing too close to a forge. The walls here were reinforced crystal instead of standard composite, able to withstand the heat that dragons naturally radiated. Danny had never been past the entrance before. The hallway curved, wider than normal to accommodate massive bodies. The whimpering was louder now. It led him to a chamber with doors 3 times his height, standing open. Soft blue light spilled out into the hallway. Danny looked inside and froze. The Dragon Prince took up most of the enormous room. He was coiled on a raised platform, scales a deep blue-black that should have gleamed under the lights, but instead looked dull and lifeless. His head was the size of a small car, resting on his forearms in a posture that looked utterly defeated. One wing was partially extended, trembling slightly, and he was young. Danny could tell somehow, maybe from the proportions or the way he held himself. This was not one of the massive adult dragons he had seen in the main halls. This was barely more than a child. The prince was pawing at a control panel with one massive claw, trying to press buttons clearly designed for much smaller hands. A holographic screen kept flickering and dying. Each time it failed, the prince made that sad whimpering sound. Danny cleared his throat. The reaction was immediate. The prince's head snapped up, and Danny found himself staring into milky white eyes that did not focus on him. Blind. The dragon was blind. Who dares enter? The prince's voice was young, but carried the natural authority of royalty. The translator implant in Danny's ear rendered the Dracith words into English with only a slight delay. Sorry, I'm Danny. I'm just a janitor. I heard noise and wanted to make sure everything was okay. The prince's nostrils flared, scenting the air. A human. You should not be here. This wing is restricted. Yeah, I know. I'll go. Danny started to back away. Wait. The prince shifted, and Danny realized how careful the movement was. Every gesture calculated to avoid knocking into things he could not see. The audio system is malfunctioning again. My handlers will not return until morning. Can you repair human technology? Danny approached the control panel. It was a standard embassy system, just scaled up. The problem was obvious. Someone had configured it for visual input only, forgetting that the user could not see the confirmation prompts. It's not broken, Danny said. It's just asking you to confirm your selection on the screen. Here, let me... He pressed the confirmation button. Immediately, a dry, automated voice began reading from what sounded like an agricultural trade report. The prince's expression somehow managed to look even more miserable. "This is what you wanted to listen to?" Danny asked. "No, but it is all that is available in the system. Diplomatic reports, economic analyses, treaty documentation." The prince's tail twitched. "I was attempting to access entertainment files, but I cannot navigate the menus." "What kind of entertainment?" The prince hesitated. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Stories. My people have a rich tradition of oral storytelling, but I have been away from home for some time. The handlers bring me official materials only. They say a prince should focus on his duties." Danny looked at the scattered data tablets around the chamber, all useless to someone who could not see. He thought about his own backpack, left by the cleaning cart, with the worn paperback novel he had been reading during his lunch break. "I could read to you," Danny heard himself say. "I've got a book. It's just a human adventure story, nothing fancy. But if you want, I could read some of it before I finish my shift." The prince's head tilted. Those blind eyes seemed to look right through Danny. "You would do this?" "Why?" Danny shrugged, even though the gesture meant nothing to a blind dragon. "Because everybody needs a story sometimes. And because I remember what it feels like to be lonely." For a long moment, the prince said nothing. Then, slowly, he settled into a more comfortable position. "I am Prince Rohan of the Drakith Empire. And yes, human Danny the janitor, I would very much like to hear a story." Danny smiled and went to get his book. The next night, Danny brought 3 books. He had spent his entire day off at the public library, something he had not done in years. The librarian had looked surprised to see him checking out actual physical books instead of downloading files. Danny did not explain that downloads would not work for what he needed. He just took his books and left. Now he stood outside Prince Rohan's chamber, suddenly nervous. Maybe the prince had changed his mind. Maybe last night had been a one-time thing born of desperation and boredom. Maybe Danny had imagined the way Rohan's entire body had relaxed when he started reading, how the sad whimpering had stopped completely. "You came back." Rohan's voice carried from inside the chamber before Danny even entered. "You can smell me. Dragons have excellent senses of smell. Yours is distinct. Cleaning chemicals and something sweet. Vanilla, perhaps." Danny looked down at his uniform. "Coffee creamer. I spill it on myself every night when I make my thermos." He walked into the chamber and found Rohan in almost the exact same position as last night, coiled on his platform. But something was different. The prince was alert, waiting. His tail, which had been dragging listlessly yesterday, was now curved in what might have been anticipation. "I told my handlers I require environmental adjustment time during night hours," Rohan said. "They will not disturb us for 2 hours each night." "You lied to them." "I creatively reinterpreted my needs." "There is a difference." The prince's tone was almost playful. "What did you bring?" Danny held up the books, then remembered. "Right. Sorry. I brought 3. A science fiction novel about colony ships, a mystery set in old Earth London, and a fantasy story about a girl who can talk to animals. You choose. I trust your judgment." Something about those words made Danny's chest feel tight. When was the last time anyone had said they trusted his judgment? He sat down on the floor, back against the cool crystal wall, and opened the science fiction novel. "This one's about humans leaving Earth to find new worlds," he said. "The main character is a mechanic on a generation ship. Not a hero or a soldier, just a regular person trying to survive. Your species writes many stories about ordinary individuals," Rohan observed. "Why is that?" Danny thought about it. "I guess because most of us are ordinary. We like stories that say ordinary can be enough." He began to read. The first chapter introduced the mechanic, a woman struggling to keep ancient engines running with limited supplies. Danny did not just read the words. He did voices, made the mechanic sound tired but determined. When the ship's alarm went off in the story, he made the sound with his mouth. When characters argued, he changed his tone to match their emotions. Rohan listened without interrupting, perfectly still except for the occasional flick of his tail. 2 hours passed like minutes. Danny finished the 4th chapter and checked his watch. "I need to get back to work or my supervisor will notice." Will you return tomorrow? If you want me to, Ido. Rowan paused. Danny, may I ask you something? Why do you work as a janitor? Your manner of speaking suggests education. The way you read indicates you were trained in oral presentation. Danny closed the book. I used to be a teacher. 3rd grade. I loved it at first. But I took every kid's problems home with me. Stayed up nights worrying about the ones who were struggling. My wife said I care more about other people's children than about our marriage. She was probably right. When we divorced, I just kind of fell apart. Couldn't stand being in a classroom anymore, seeing all those needs I could not fix. So I found a job where nobody needed anything from me except clean floors. Yet here you are, giving me something I need. This is different. This is just reading. No pressure, no expectations. Perhaps. Rohan's blind eyes seemed thoughtful. Or perhaps you simply found someone whose needs you can actually meet. I do not require you to fix me, Danny. I only need you to read. Danny stood, brushing dust off his pants. I'll see you tomorrow, Prince Rohan. Just Rohan, please. Titles mean little when one is alone in the dark. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into an easy pattern. Danny arrived at 2 in the morning, read for 2 hours, and left before the handlers came at dawn. They finished the science fiction novel and started the mystery. Rohan asked questions between chapters, fascinated by human culture and thinking. Your detective relies on observation and logic, Rohan said one night. Not strength or intimidation. Yeah, that's kind of the point. He's smarter than everyone else, not stronger. Drackett's stories are different. Our heroes win through power and honor. The strong triumph. The weak perish. There is no glory in cleverness alone. Danny set the book down. Is that why they sent you here? Because being blind made you weak in their eyes. The chamber fell silent. Danny wondered if he had pushed too far. Then Rohan spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I was injured in a training accident. A cave collapsed during military exercises. The rocks crushed my optical organs beyond repair. I survived, but recovery took years. When I was finally well enough to leave the medical facilities, my father told me I could no longer serve in the warrior caste. He found me this diplomatic position instead, called an honor. But we both knew the truth. I am here because I am useless at home. You're not useless. You barely know me. I know you listen better than anyone I've ever met. I know you ask smart questions. I know you're figuring out human nature just from hearing stories about us. Danny picked up the book again. That doesn't sound useless to me. That sounds like someone who's paying attention. Rohan's scales seemed to brighten slightly, catching the blue light. Thank you, Danny, for that, and for coming back each night. Nowhere else I'd rather be, Danny said, and meant it. He opened the book and continued reading. Ambassador Krenth paced the length of the diplomatic suite, his massive claws clicking against the stone floor. The other Drakketh delegates watched nervously. When an ambassador paced, nothing good followed. Prince Rohan spoke at the General Assembly today. Krenth said, his voice dangerous. He proposed a compromise on the mining rights dispute. A compromise, as if we negotiate with lesser species instead of taking what is rightfully ours. The prince is young, offered one of the older delegates. Perhaps he does not understand proper protocol. He understood perfectly well when he arrived. Blind, yes, but properly trained in Drakketh superiority. Now he speaks of mutual benefit and shared prosperity. Where did he learn such weakness? Nobody answered. Krenth's tail lashed. I want to know who has been influencing him. Check the security logs. Find out who has accessed his chamber. Miles away, in that very chamber, Danny was reading from a battered book about a blind musician who became a bridge between warring nations. He had found it at a used bookstore, drawn by the parallels he could not ignore. Rohan was completely still, absorbing every word. When Danny reached the part where the musician was rejected by his own people for trying to make peace, the prince made a small sound of recognition. This story, Rohan said softly. Where did you find it? Just a bookstore. Why? Because I am living it. Rohan shifted, his massive head turning toward Danny, even though he could not see him. The trade summit is failing, Danny. The Drakketh delegation wants exclusive mining rights to 3 systems that human colonies already occupy. Ambassador Krenth insists we simply take them by force if necessary. The human delegates refuse to back down. Both sides are preparing to walk away. That's bad. Worse than bad. It could mean war. A war my people would likely win through military might. But at what cost? And I keep thinking about your stories. About how humans always find another way. You compromise, you adapt, you build alliances instead of just crushing opposition. Danny closed the book. What are you going to do? I requested permission to address the full assembly tomorrow. My father granted me observer status at this summit, but I have never actually used it. Krenth is furious, but he cannot refuse a royal prince the right to speak. What will you say? Rohan was quiet for a long moment. I will tell them that strength without wisdom is just brutality. That the humans have something we lack, not in spite of their weakness, but because of it. They have learned to survive through cooperation. And maybe, just maybe, combining Drakith strength with human adaptability could benefit both our peoples. Danny felt his stomach drop. Rohan, they'll destroy you for that. Your own delegation will call it treason. Perhaps, but I have to try. These past weeks, listening to human stories, learning how your people think. I have changed, Danny. I see the galaxy differently now. I cannot go back to pretending the old ways are the only ways. Because of books. Because of you. Rohan's voice was firm. The books are just words. You brought them to life. You made me care about characters who were weak by Drakith standards, but strong in ways my people never valued. You showed me that being different does not mean being broken. Danny did not know what to say. He had just been reading stories. He had not meant to start some kind of revolution. I should finish this chapter, he finally managed. You need to hear how it ends. The next night, Danny arrived to find the chamber sealed. A Drakith guard blocked the entrance, scales gleaming red in the corridor lights. This area is restricted, the guard growled. I'm supposed to. Prince Rohan asked me to. The prince sees no one tonight. Ambassador's orders. Danny stood there uselessly, his books clutched against his chest. He had no authority, no official reason to be there. He was just a janitor who had wandered into something far bigger than himself. He returned to his cleaning cart and tried to work, but his mind was on Rohan. Alone in that chamber, preparing to stand before the entire Drakith delegation and challenge everything they believed. All because of stories. All because Danny had read to him. The morning news feeds lit up with coverage of the assembly. Danny watched on his phone during his break, searching for any mention of Rohan. Finally, a brief clip appeared. The prince, massive and dignified, speaking before a room full of dragons who looked at him with expressions ranging from shock to outright hostility. We claim to value strength, Rohan's translated voice said, but we are too rigid to adapt. The humans thrive not because they are strong, but because they are flexible. Perhaps true strength lies not in domination, but in the wisdom to learn from those different from ourselves. The feed cut off, but Danny had seen enough. He also saw Ambassador Krenth's face in the background, twisted with rage. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Danny almost ignored it, then answered. Danny. It was a female Drakith voice, younger than most he had heard. My name is Salah. I am Prince Rohan's handler. We need to talk. Now. They met in a service corridor, away from cameras and curious eyes. Salah was smaller than most Drakith, her scales a lighter shade of blue. She looked exhausted. Ambassador Krenth knows someone has been visiting Rohan, she said without preamble. He is reviewing security footage, interviewing staff. It is only a matter of time before he discovers you. I'll quit. Leave the embassy. Whatever keeps Rohan safe. The prince refuses to allow that. He says you are his friend, the first real friend he has had since his accident. He would rather face disgrace than lose you. Danny leaned against the wall. What do we do? I do not know. But Krenth is powerful and he is angry. The prince's speech today humiliated him. He will not forgive that. And when he finds out a human janitor has been influencing a royal prince. Salah's tail twitched nervously. It will not end well for either of you. Then we need to make sure he doesn't find out. How? The cameras, the logs, the other staff who have seen you. Leave that to me, Danny said, with more confidence than he felt. I've been invisible in this place for 3 years. Time to use that. But even as he said it, he wondered if being invisible would be enough to protect either of them from what was coming. Director Hayes looked up from her desk as Danny entered her office. The human administrator of the embassy's facilities division had a reputation for being fair but tough. Danny had spoken to her maybe twice in 3 years. "You wanted to see me?" Danny tried to keep his voice steady. Hayes gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Walsh. We need to talk about Prince Rowan." Danny's heart sank. This was it. He was fired, possibly arrested for unauthorized contact with a diplomatic guest. He wondered if they would let him say goodbye to Rowan. "I know you've been visiting him," Hayes continued. "The night shift security footage shows you entering the Drakketh wing regularly for the past month." "I can explain." Hayes held up a hand. "I'm not firing you. Actually, I wanted to thank you." Danny blinked. "What?" "The change in Prince Rowan has been remarkable. Our diplomatic observers noticed it weeks ago. He participates in sessions now, asks insightful questions, proposes creative solutions. The human delegation has been trying to figure out what changed. Then I saw the security footage and put the pieces together." She smiled slightly. "You've been reading to him. Just books. Stories. I didn't think it would turn him into the most effective mediator at this summit." "Danny, the Drakketh are impossible to work with normally. They see everything as dominance and submission. But Rowan is different now. He understands compromise, cooperation. He's learning human thinking patterns. From stories. From you explaining the stories. From the conversations you have between chapters. From being treated like a person instead of a disabled prince they shuffled off to a corner." Hayes leaned forward. "I want to make your position official. Cultural liaison to Prince Rowan. Day shift, proper salary, an actual office." Danny felt dizzy. "I don't want an office. I like the night shift. I like the quiet. I understand, but this is bigger than personal preference. What you're doing is important. The prince trusts you. That trust is valuable. What if I say no?" Hayes's expression hardened. "Then Ambassador Krentha's investigation will find you anyway, and I won't be able to protect you. At least this way, you have official status. You're not some janitor sneaking around. You're a recognized member of the diplomatic staff." Danny thought about Rowan, alone in that chamber, waiting for him. "Does the prince know about this?" "Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first. Then I need to talk to him before I decide." Hayes nodded. "Fair enough. But Danny? Krentha is circling. He knows someone influenced Rowan. Make your decision quickly." That night, Danny entered Rohan's chamber to find the prince agitated. His tail was lashing, and his scales had darkened. "They are going to separate us," Rowan said before Danny could speak. "Krentha demanded I cease all unauthorized contact. He has not discovered you specifically yet, but he is close." Danny sat down in his usual spot. "Director Hayes offered me a real position. Cultural liaison. It would make our meetings official, protected. You would have to work day shifts. Be visible. Deal with people and politics. Yeah, you hate those things. You took the janitor job specifically to avoid them. How did you know that?" Rohan's tone softened. "Because I listened, Danny. You have told me about your life in pieces, between chapters. I know you retreated from teaching because it hurt too much to care. I know you prefer being invisible. I know asking you to step into the light is asking you to sacrifice your peace." Danny was quiet for a moment. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to be happy, even if that means not seeing you anymore." "That's not what I asked." Rohan's massive head lowered until it was level with Danny. Those blind white eyes seemed to see straight into him. "I want you to stay. I want these readings to continue. I want my friend, but I will not ask you to destroy yourself for my sake. You're not destroying me. You're reminding me why I became a teacher in the first place." Danny opened his backpack and pulled out the latest book. "I'm going to take the position. Not because Hayes is making me, but because you matter to me. And maybe it's time I stop hiding. Danny, plus, somebody has to make sure you don't accidentally start a diplomatic incident with your weird human ideas about cooperation." Rowan made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Too late. I already did that today." "What happened?" "Krentha confronted me privately. Demanded to know who has been corrupting me with human weakness. I refused to tell him. He threatened to contact my father, to have me recalled in disgrace. What did you say? I told him that learning from other species is not weakness, that the Dracoth Empire's refusal to adapt is why we are failing at modern diplomacy, that perhaps I see more clearly than he does, despite my blindness. Rohan's voice grew quieter. He did not respond well. You bet. He filed a formal protest with the Terran Coalition. Claims humans are manipulating a disabled royal for political gain. Says you're exploiting my isolation. Danny felt anger flare. That's garbage. You sought me out. I just read books to you. I know, but he has made it an official accusation. The Coalition has to investigate. You will be questioned. Our friendship will be examined and judged by people who do not understand it. Let them judge. I've got nothing to hide. You have everything to lose. Your new position, your reputation, possibly your freedom if Krenth pushes hard enough. Then I guess I better make sure they understand the truth. Danny stood up. Tomorrow, I start my new job. Tonight, I'm still just a janitor reading to a friend. So how about we finish this chapter before everything gets complicated? Rohan settled into his listening position. You are braver than you think, Danny Walsh. Or dumber. Haven't decided which yet. Danny opened the book. Now shut up and let me read. We're at the good part. As his voice filled the chamber, Danny realized something. For the first time in years, he was not running from connection. He was running toward it. And even if everything fell apart tomorrow, tonight he had this. A dragon prince who listened, a story worth telling, and a friendship that mattered more than being invisible ever had he read until his voice grew hoarse, and Rohan listened until the words became dreams. The ceremonial chamber of the Dracoth delegation was built to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings that disappeared into shadow, walls of dark stone carved with images of ancient victories, and a raised platform where Ambassador Krenth sat like a judge. 20 dragons filled the space, their combined body heat making the air shimmer. Prince Rohan entered alone, walking carefully but with dignity. His blindness was obvious in the way he moved, testing each step before committing his weight. The assembled dragons watched in silence that felt like contempt. Danny watched from a viewing screen in Director Hayes' office, his stomach twisted in knots. Hayes had forbidden him from attending in person, saying his presence would only inflame the situation. So he watched helplessly as his friend faced his own people's judgment. Prince Rohan, Krenth began, his voice formal and cold. You stand accused of bringing shame to the Dracoth Empire through your association with a human janitor. You have allowed yourself to be manipulated, filling your mind with weak human philosophies that contradict our values. What say you? Rohan raised his head. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of royal blood. I say that I sought out Danny Walsh's company of my own will. I asked him to read to me. I chose to listen and learn. There was no manipulation, only friendship. Friendship. One of the older delegates spoke up. You demean yourself by claiming friendship with a menial laborer of an inferior species. Inferior. Rohan turned toward the voice. By what measure? Humans lack our physical strength, true, but they possess qualities we have long dismissed as weakness. Creativity, adaptability, the ability to cooperate with species completely unlike themselves. These are not flaws. They are why humanity has built alliances across the galaxy, while we stand alone in our pride. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Krenth's scales darkened with anger. You speak heresy, young prince. Our strength is what makes us great. Our strength is all we have, Rohan corrected. And it is not enough. Not anymore. The galaxy has changed, Ambassador. Species must work together now. Those who cannot adapt will be left behind, no matter how strong they are. These are human ideas poisoning your mind. These are truths I learned from human stories, yes. Stories about ordinary people overcoming impossible odds. About the power of cooperation. About seeing value in those who are different. Rohan's voice grew stronger. I was blind before I met Danny Walsh, but not just in my eyes. I was blind to possibility, to other ways of thinking, to my own potential. He did not manipulate me. He showed me I could be more than my disability, more than a failed prince hidden away in shame. The chamber fell silent. Danny, watching the screen, felt tears prick his eyes. Salah, standing at the edge of the assembly, spoke up. I have observed Prince Rohan daily. His transformation is genuine. He is more engaged, more effective, more valuable to our delegation than before. Whatever the source of this change, the results speak for themselves. Results. Krent stood, his full size, making the platform shake. He proposes compromise and cooperation. He speaks of mutual benefit instead of Dracath supremacy. He has become soft, weak, corrupted by human sentimentality. I have become effective, Rohan said quietly. My compromise proposal on the mining dispute has brought 3 species to the negotiating table. Species that were ready to walk away from this summit entirely. Traditional Dracath aggression was failing. My approach is working. Before Krent could respond, a priority communication signal chimed through the chamber. Every dragon froze. That particular tone meant only one thing. Direct contact from the Dragon Emperor himself, that the holographic projection materialized in the center of the chamber. The Emperor was ancient and massive, his scales bearing the scars of countless battles. His presence, even as a hologram, dominated the space. Father, Rohan said, bowing his head. My son. The Emperor's voice was like grinding stone. I have been monitoring this summit with great interest. Your recent activities have drawn my attention. This was a Danny thought. The Emperor would condemn Rohan, side with Krent, and everything would end in disgrace. Ambassador Krent has informed me that you have been influenced by a human, the Emperor continued, that you have abandoned our values in favor of their weakness. Yes, Father, I have learned from humans, but I have not abandoned our values. I have expanded them. Explain. Rohan straightened. Our people measure worth by strength in battle. By that measure, I am worthless. My blindness makes me unfit for the warrior caste. You sent me to this summit because there was no other place for a broken prince. But humans taught me that worth can be measured differently. That wisdom, understanding, and the ability to bridge differences have their own strength. I have used these tools to achieve what our traditional methods could not. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. The mining rights proposal. That was your work. Yes, Father. It shows weakness, sharing resources instead of taking them by force. It shows wisdom. 3 species now work together instead of fighting. The resources are extracted more efficiently through cooperation, and the Dracath Empire gains allies instead of enemies. Is that not a form of strength? The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You speak like a human. I speak like someone who has learned there are many paths to power. Physical dominance is one. But alliances built on mutual respect and benefit, that is power too. Power that lasts because it is chosen, not forced. Another long silence. Danny held his breath. You make an interesting argument, my son. Very well. You may continue your cultural studies with this human. But I add one condition. You must prove that this approach benefits the Dracath Empire. You must use your human insights to achieve concrete diplomatic victories. If you fail, you will be recalled. Your experiment will be deemed a failure, and this friendship will end. Do you accept these terms? Rohan's entire body seemed to glow with determination. I accept, Father. I will not fail. The hologram vanished. The assembly sat in stunned silence. Krent looked like he had swallowed poison. Rohan turned toward where he knew the ambassador stood. I believe this assembly is concluded. Unless you have further accusations to make. Krent said nothing. He simply left, followed by half the delegation. The others remained, looking at their blind prince with something new in their eyes. Not pity, not contempt, something almost like respect. 3 months after the assembly, Danny sat in what used to be a storage room, but was now officially his office. The title on his door read Cultural Advisor to the Dracath Prince. He still was not used to it. His phone buzzed. Director Hayes. Conference Room 3. Now, bring Prince Rohan. Danny found Rohan already waiting in the hallway, Salah at his side. The prince had grown comfortable navigating the embassy, though he still moved carefully. Hayes summoned you too? Danny asked. Yes. She sounded excited. They entered the conference room to find representatives from 3 different species waiting. Human, Vraxi, and Kelton. all looked nervous. Hayes stood at the head of the table. Gentlemen, we have a situation. The asteroid belt trade dispute that's been stalled for 6 weeks? These 3 species all claim mining rights. It's about to explode into open conflict unless we find a solution. What does this have to do with us? Danny asked. Prince Rohan's previous compromise worked. We want him to mediate this one. Rohan tilted his head. You want me to negotiate a 3-way agreement? We want you to try. If anyone can find common ground, it's you. The negotiations took 3 days. Danny watched as Rohan transformed from a shy prince into a natural mediator. He listened to each species' concerns, really listened in a way that made them feel heard. Then he asked questions that made them see each other's perspectives. The Vraxi need the heavy metals for their fleet construction, Rohan said on the second day. The Keltons need the ice for their colony worlds. The humans need the rare elements for their medical technology. You are not actually competing. You need different resources from the same location. Proximity matters, the Vraxi delegate argued. We cannot share mining operations efficiently. What if each species contributed their unique strength? Rohan suggested. Vraxi provide military protection and heavy transport ships. Humans offer innovative extraction technology. Keltons are master artisans who can refine raw materials more efficiently than anyone. You divide the work according to ability and share the profits proportionally. The room fell silent. That would require trusting each other, the human delegate said slowly. Trust is earned through action, Rohan replied. Start with a limited trial period. 6 months. If it works, you expand. If it fails, you lose only time. But if it succeeds, you all gain far more than you would fighting over scraps. Danny recognized the technique. It was straight from one of the stories they had read, about a merchant who united rival cities through shared prosperity. Rohan had adapted it perfectly to this situation that on the 3rd day, all 3 species signed preliminary agreements. His looked like she might cry from relief. How did you do that? She asked Rohan afterward. I told them a story, the prince said simply, about how cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict. Humans taught me that story. I just translated it into diplomatic language. That night, for the first time in months, they returned to their original ritual. Rohan in his chamber, Danny with a new book. The Emperor sent a message today, Rohan said. He is pleased with the mining agreement. He called it a strategic victory for the Drakith Empire. Is it? Yes and no. We gain resources and allies. But more than that, we gain something my people have never valued. Genuine partnerships built on mutual respect. Rohan's scales brightened. He has offered me a permanent ambassadorial position, leading the first Drakith embassy focused on alliance building rather than intimidation. Danny felt happiness and dread in equal measure. That's incredible. You want me to establish the embassy on the neutral station near the Coalition core worlds. It would be permanent. So you're leaving? Not without you. Rohan turned his blind eyes toward Danny. The position comes with a full staff. I requested you specifically as my primary cultural advisor. Real position, proper salary, living quarters on the station. You would come with me. Danny set down the book he had not started reading yet. Rohan, I can't just leave Earth. This is my home. Is it? Or is it just where you have been hiding? The words stung because they were true. Danny looked around the crystal chamber that had become more home to him than his tiny apartment ever had. What would I even do there, he asked. Exactly what you do now. Read to me. Talk with me. Help me understand human thinking. Be my friend. Rohan's voice softened. Danny, you gave me my purpose back. You showed me that being different does not mean being broken. Let me give you something in return. A chance to stop hiding. To use your gift for connection in ways that matter. Danny thought about his empty apartment, his non-existent social life, the years he had spent being invisible. Then he thought about these past months, watching Rohan grow into himself, seeing the prince find confidence and purpose. When do we leave? Danny heard himself say 0.6 weeks later. Danny packed his belongings into 3 boxes. Everything he owned fit into 3 boxes. That seemed sad until he realized he was not leaving things behind. He was moving towards something. The transport ship was comfortable, designed for diplomatic travel. Rowan had his own chamber, large enough to accommodate his size. Danny had quarters next door, connected by a passage that on their first night in transit, Danny brought out a worn book of human poetry. He had been saving it for a special occasion. "This one is different," he said, settling into a chair that had been installed specifically for their reading sessions. "Poetry doesn't tell stories like novels do. It captures moments, feelings, truths in just a few words." "I trust your judgment," Rowan said. Danny smiled and opened the book. As his voice filled the chamber, reading words about hope and change and new beginnings, Rowan listened with complete attention. Outside, stars streamed past as they traveled toward their new life. Inside, a former janitor read poetry to a dragon prince, and both of them were exactly where they needed to be. "Danny," Rowan said when the poem ended. "Yeah, thank you. For everything. For reading to me that first night. For coming back. For seeing me instead of just my blindness. Thank you for listening. For reminding me that connection matters. That being needed isn't the same as being used. Will you read another? As many as you want. We got time." And they did. All the time in the galaxy, and a whole new embassy to build, and stories still to share. Danny turned the page and began to read again. His voice steady and warm. It was, Rowan thought, still his favorite sound in the universe. The janitor who had been invisible found his purpose reading to a blind prince. And together, they proved that sometimes the smallest gestures, the simplest kindnesses, could change everything. Not because they had to, but because they chose to.